Let's
Oh.
use it.
And we have a title screen. We're so
Woo!
professional. Okay, so we start like 10, 15 minutes late and we make our own music. Sen, we desperately need you.
We desperately need Sen back.
But Sen will be back with us next week. But meanwhile, you're stuck with Tiffany and I. What we have a wonderful episode with coming for one of our guests is going to just randomly show up, hopefully any second, and then we have Jason Kingsley, who, according to Isaac Shalev, is my email doppelganger. Because for some reason, every time I email him, it comes up as Jason. Hey, there's Josh.
Oh my God.
We're gonna black you out though, so we'll
Sure.
bring you. So now you can
you're gonna
breathe.
be a surprise.
You're gonna be a surprise. No one knows you're on this episode yet.
Yeah, he's gone.
You
Oh,
gotta.
man. I muted him.
Okay, there we go.
Well, I did, and then it undid it.
Yeah.
It's not letting me mute him anyway.
There it is. No, you did it. You did it. You did good. You did good. So, yeah. So Josh Capel will also be on. Surprise. Spoilers. And we're going to be talking about what did we title this episode?
Artistic differences.
Hey.
We're talking about art in board games.
That's right.
Yeah, and all sorts of stuff with art, and yeah.
Talking like visuals, talking about like the aesthetic, talking about the feel and what you're going for, the experience that you go through and with during a board game. And on that note, have you played any good board games lately?
I think since the last time I was on this show, I've played a number. Did I play I've played The Colonist, which is super awesome.
I heard that's awesome.
Yeah, we only played 3 eras, which are essentially kind of like rounds, phases. I don't really know how I guess they're rounds, sort of. We only played 3, and it took like 4 hours, but they went by super fast. Like, I didn't believe that we had been playing for as long as we had been playing until I checked Twitter, and then I was like, oh, yeah. Like, that was 3 hours ago when I tweeted that we were starting to play. It's super good. I really, really like it. And it's the second game that I regret not getting at Essen, but we did get it for a friend, and that friend is in our game group. So we will get to play it more.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, other than that, I did manage to finally play a 7-player game of... 7-player? Yes. No. 5-player game of Captain Sonar. And
Ooh.
it is fun. It is still fun. And I really enjoyed it. My family really enjoyed it. They were kind of like, about playing it, and then they really got into it. So
that's awesome.
It was good. How about you?
Yeah, well, I was just at BGG Con, so got to play lots of games. Not rubbing that in, sorry. I wish you were there. Trust me. For many reasons. But yeah, it was fun. A couple of the highlights for me was a couple of games that I'm going to give a plug. One was, and I'm sure it'll get talked about, I was very excited to get my copy of Rock, Paper, Wizard, which was co-designed by one of our guests and art as well. And then I was excited to get my copy of one of my games, Mine All Mine. So that was super fun to get to see it in action and show a few people the game, and also got to play test a bunch of games like Isaac Shalev and Matt Loomis's Sakatsu with some people, and got to play some Turtles, and got to play some card games. I really enjoyed Capital Lux. That was one that I got to try that was an Essen release. Maggie Bots taught me Niet, which was probably my favorite game of the con for myself.
Still yet to play that.
Yeah, I really liked it. So yeah, some good stuff. But I gotta give a shout out. I got a couple hats that were given to me. So this one was given to me by Larry. If you're not part of the Facebook, the board game group, you should be. There's tons of people there, lots of good chatter about board games, and they gave me a hat. so excited. And then, so shout out to Larry Cruz, who has a really cool prototype game that I got to play. And then also shout out to Patrick Hillier, who brought me a hat from the minor league team of his hometown.
That's awesome.
Was super generous and kind. So, anyways, if I remember, I will wear that next week. I've already worn it this week around. So, thank you to both of y'all for the hats. So, with no further ado, let's welcome our guests on. Who do we got?
Well, first off, we have Jason Kingsley.
Yay!
He has to unmute himself. I can't unmute you. I can just silence you.
He has to do all the heavy lifting.
Ta-da! Hello,
yes.
interwebs.
Interwebs. And then we also have, it was spoiled before, but we're just glad he's here, Josh Capel.
Josh Capel. You also have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, you gotta hit that mute button at the top, and then you'll be... No? Or we'll unmute you somehow.
There we go.
Oh,
I got it.
You're in. Hey, I would just
hello.
like to say I'm loving the Snakes and Lattes shirt. You're really representing the T-Dot.
Thank you. Coincidental.
Yeah.
Just
that's nice. That's nice. And then, Jason, you're sporting a hat that I would like to acquire in my collection.
I do. I got it at BGG Con. Super cool.
You got to get me one of those.
Oh, nice.
How many hats do you have, Daryl?
I don't have that many. Like,
you call it a collection, like.
Well, there is a collection element to it, but it's not like I have more board games.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's not hard to do. I feel.
But I'm gonna start us off. And for anyone who doesn't know, this will be an easy way for people to get familiar with some of Jason's work. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about your design history and also then your art history in board games? So give us a little profile plug. I know you're not a bragger, but you got to give a little shout out for some of the work that you've been part of.
Yeah, for sure. It's been awesome getting to dive into the industry, get to know people, work on stuff. I think I started working on board games, doing graphic design and illustration maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been a while. Started off kind of slow. Since then, I've worked on Foxtrot Games' Lanterns, the Harvest Festival,
I've heard of
and worked with Adam McIver a little bit on World's Fair 1893. Worked on, Flag Bash for Peacekeeper Games. Dead Men Tell No Tales for Minion Games. Handful of others. And have also done a little bit of game design. Not a lot that I've done is out yet, but my first was Ophir with Terra Nova Games, co-designed with Charles Wright, and my second that came out was Lanterns, the Emperor's Gifts, which I just got a copy of this week.
Oh, jealous. Oh, man.
So that was really
Very
cool
nice.
to get to work with Randy Hoyt of Foxtrot and Chris Chung. And Charles Wright also helped develop that.
All horrible people.
Horrible people.
I can't think of 3 people I hate more.
So it's been super fun. Working on lots of projects right now. Busy. Finishing up the year, trying to get stuff in before Chinese New Year, and looking forward to 2017. See what's next.
Awesome. I have no idea if we lost Tiffany. Tiffany, are you still there?
There's like a
I'm
placeholder.
here audio-wise. I don't know what happened to my camera. I've been trying to troubleshoot it.
I was hoping you'd even reply in the internal chat.
I'm sorry. I've been really focused on the camera issue.
That makes sense. Well, we'll live for now with you being a logo.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a nice logo.
Talking visuals. Big shout out to Gavin Brown for that. Thank you for making the pancakes, and the butter looks so good with that wonderful syrup.
Makes me hungry every time.
Yeah. So, Tiffany, you're next.
Well, I mean, can I be really lame and just say basically same question to Josh? Kind of on
Sure, I can answer.
Yeah.
Wait, what was the question though?
The games that Jason has designed and done art.
Well,
for.
Josh, what
Okay,
have you done?
Everybody
Not
knows what
design-wise,
Josh Capella's
but-
done.
Festival, and I think something about there was a parody one.
I was
And,
testing you. You passed
World's
the test.
Fair. Yeah.
You listened well.
I was listening. Okay, same question for me. I don't know. I got like a million games, and I'm lucky because I'm actually sitting beside the shelf upon which I keep a bunch of them, so I could just like do this instead.
Whoa.
Oh,
Wow.
Dang.
Okay, so here's like, oh, these guys. Is it backwards? Or is
No,
No, you're
it
good.
looks backwards to you, but it's right to us.
Yeah. Okay, so like a whole bunch of games down here, and a whole
Oh,
bunch
I
of games.
recognize
Oh, look,
one of
look at
those.
that, Daryl, one of yours, and
Hey.
even one of my own. Yeah.
Heyo.
Yeah. Okay, so I've done a bunch of art for a bunch of these games. There we go.
Very nice.
There are a couple of good ones in there, and then a few others that are kind of scattered around the shelves here. But
beautiful.
that's where they stay when they're not being regularly played.
Nice. Well, and I'm gonna piggyback off of that and say, what work are you doing that you're allowed to talk about now? Like, what are some things that are coming through the pipeline?
Damn. Okay. I've had a couple of games of my own signed in recent years that are now finally starting to roll out and come out. So Rock Paper Wizard that you showed there, I don't have a copy yet, so I'm pretty jealous that you got your.
Okay.
But it's like achieving some amazing 12-year-old nerd goal to have Dungeons and Dragons on a box with my name on it. So I'm pretty
Mission
pretty
accomplished.
thrilled about that.
That's a check mark.
It's really great. Yeah, it's really great. There's that. I got a game for Hook and Friends coming out. It's a kids game called Kokonana. It was originally called River Runners, and you might know it, Daryl, under that name.
I do.
don't know if you ever played that.
Well, I even know it as Coconanas because I've been talking to Hooch and
Right,
friends.
yeah. So I just finished the art for that too, which is it's looking absolutely beautiful. They took me in a new direction
Cool.
with it, so I'm very happy with where they pushed me to. Am I allowed to talk about the game I'm working on for you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm working on a game for IDW designed by Daryl Andrews and Adrian Adamescu called Jungle Joust, which is really firing up some illustration cylinders for me. Really nice. It's got me illustrating knights riding rhinos that are crashing into each other. So, that's always fun as an illustrator to do something crazy like that. What else? I'm doing like 6 or 7 projects right now. Daryl probably understands that I'm very swamped with work right now from the rate.
That might be a little reason
something.
why you popped in very last minute.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big swirl of projects right now. I'm doing Problem Picnic. I'm finishing up the art files for that for my wife's company, Kids Table Board Gaming, and I don't know, a few others on the go as well.
Very cool.
So lots of work. Just keeps on coming.
Keep on coming.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany? Uh-oh. She's no longer not.
We fully lost her.
Yeah. Well, I'll just keep going until Tiffany comes back.
And I have to tell you.
Oh.
I have to tell you that I'm on the iPad right now, so I don't have access to the chat. So if you're trying to write me secret notes in the side saying talk about this, talk about that, I'm not seeing them.
No secret notes for you. You're
right.
just too much of a professional. We don't need to give you cues. But Tiffany, I feel like she broke through for a second. Like, no?
There's occasionally a burst of static that might be her.
Yeah, I feel like she's in the static. Whoa, and another Josh is here?
Oh, that's really weird. I'm here twice.
And we can hear you now twice.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that right now.
Well, so Tiffany has the ability.
There.
She hid you, left the group. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
there's
tried to log
only
in from my desktop so that I can also be on the chat, but
only one Josh in
not gonna
this
work
episode. Sorry for everyone out there that was hoping for 2.
I wish that there could be 2 of me. Wish.
So bouncing back then to Jason, I'm curious. Let's get into this topic. Tell me a little bit about your process when it comes to taking a game. What if someone hypothetically was like kickstarting and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to hire you." What would you want? Like, what would you need and what would you want to go through the process? Like, are you looking for a playable prototype? Are you Like, what steps and questions are you asking early on to a publisher? Walk us through that.
Okay. It's a little different for everyone because every publisher has kind of a different approach and a different number of people they've worked with. You know, a lot of Kickstarter creators, at least years back when I started, almost everybody was a new Kickstarter creator, right? Now, of course, it's pretty widespread, but a lot of times I do try and get a prototype or play a game at a convention, for instance, at least once to get a feel for it. I really like to start off kind of communication heavy, set expectations, talk about the scope of the project, how much time they're looking for the job to be completed in when they're trying to go to press. And things almost always take twice as much time as you expect them to. There's so many things that can pop up along the way. The creative process is like beautiful and messy and a lot of work, but I always try and start off with expectations, make sure that we're on the same page. We work through pricing and kind of all the obvious paperwork sort of stuff. But yeah, usually try and jump right in with playing the game and experiencing it, getting to know the publisher a little bit, and then trying to figure out what sort of vibe and atmosphere they want for the game. Try and connect on that vision.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to kind of repeat the question a little bit for Josh and say specifically, is there anything different or question, or even some of the examples of questions that you would ask a publisher or designer early in the process?
That I would ask a publisher when we're initiating a project?
Yeah. What are some questions that maybe artists should be asking so that, the project will start in the right foot?
Right. Well, I think with artists, you sometimes get a divide between graphic designers and illustrators, and then you have people that do both. I'm one of them that does both, so I need to think of it from both of those angles. For me, and I think most graphic designers should be the same way. All of them who are making games should be the same way. The function of the game trumps everything. Your art needs to make the game work better. It needs to be beautiful, but if it's beautiful at the expense of the gameplay, then you're making a mistake. You're a detraction in the game instead of a benefit. So for me, my initial questions to a publisher or to a designer, because I like to include the game designer in the conversation early on, is more about the gameplay than about what they want the game to look like. We can figure out what the game is going to look like once I understand what the game is supposed to be doing for the players. So how is the game supposed to work, and what kind of experience does the designer and the publisher want the player to have, and how can we make the components have that happen more reliably for the player? So early questions are all about gameplay, and then we'll move into artistic questions after that.
Very cool. Very cool. And I noticed we have Tiffany back?
Oh, hi.
Oh,
visuals and no audio now.
Just your beautiful visuals, but not the necessary other oratory components.
We've seen every iteration of problem.
So we'll continue to show off the different sides to an interview gone wrong, but I'll continue. So
you could Sharpie out your questions on a piece of paper.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Meanwhile, while that's happening, I'm going to bounce back to Jason. Talking about the divide between graphic illustration and art, could you give some example of why and how that's different? Because some people might not even understand the differences there and what that all entails. What elements of a board game are being done from the graphic design part, and then what parts are being done by go there.
Definitely. There can be a little overlap. Like Josh said, there are some people who do both. And that can be sort of confusing to first-time creators especially. But personally, I trend to do more graphic design these days than illustration. I feel like it's really, really needed in the board game community right now. There's so many people that are looking for good, solid graphic designers. So if you are one, get in touch with me or Josh, and I'm sure we have people we can push you to. But graphic design is kind of the main extension of that functionality that Josh mentioned. And it is the most important part of the game, I think, because really that's what the players are interacting with. And the art, as far as the illustration, that is more of, I mean, graphic design can definitely play into the aesthetics, but the illustration is more kind of an atmosphere, an aesthetic. And
Yep.
it
blurs.
It's usually the first thing that people notice, the illustrations. Graphic design, if it's done really well, sort of blends into the background, and you don't really notice it a lot if you've done a good job. But the illustration kind of captures people's attention. It's like the book cover that you see when you first look at a game. And for that reason, I think a lot of publishers, especially new creators, can kind of focus on that and not focus on the graphic design or the functionality of the game quite enough. And so for me, I really like to push graphic design, finding a good, solid graphic designer, because really that gameplay, that experience that people are going to have, and how easy it is for players to engage with the content, that's going to be what is going to sustain people over 10, 20 plays. Over time, you really want people to be able to do repeat plays without having any trouble at all. And the artwork is important, the illustration, but it's kind of a secondary factor in my mind.
Absolutely. Well, Tiffany's loading questions up for me because she can't talk, but she can type. So if you're in the YouTube, talk to Tiffany, and we will try to include your questions in the episode. I have a question from Not a Computer, and this one's for Josh. Can you talk about, have you ever had a fight or a disagreement with a publisher or designer on layout, presentation of a game? And, how do you get through a difference of opinion on something like that?
I've never had a fight with a publisher about anything. I've had some disagreements for sure, and in every case we work it out one way or the other. The publisher has final veto power. It's their project. They're putting it together, but I think that I've put together enough of credibility in the industry that they're going to take my opinion and appreciate it when I give it back to them. So I'm not always automatically going to do what a publisher wants done. I'm going to show them, hey, this is going to be better, and trust me. And sometimes they trust me, and sometimes they choose not to. So when they choose not to, I have to do it the way that they want it. They're the one paying the bill, so that's the way they get it. But most of the time, we can talk it out and make it so that it's the way that's going to be better for the game. We both want the game to be better. So if we can talk to each other and work out which way is going to be better, then that we come to that solution almost always.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example too. Like, to work on something and show what you're trying to communicate, and like another option, so that at least then, it's not just like a publisher has this idea in their head, but then if you can show them an alternative, then maybe they'll buy in. So,
publishers are smart people. They're gamers. They understand what they like about games and how games work, and they're in this business because they like games and they want to make games. So they can be spoken to and reasoned with, and they're not just somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. They know what they want, and they understand what a game requires. So it's not like just talking to a brick wall. These people usually are versed in what's going to work, and what's not going to work.
Absolutely.
Make it happen.
Jumping back to Jason and talking through, you mentioned, it always seems like it takes double the time. Although, as people are working on timelines and trying to figure everything out, how do you figure out your timeline? I mean, I feel like, how do you put a timeline on creative? I can't fathom a timeline on design, and yet you're being forced to give timelines all the time. So how do you do that? How do you estimate that? Give some tips for people that maybe are going to be joining our industry. How do you figure it out? And or are there any people that kind of gave you some tips along the way?
Yeah, it's tough because I mean the timeline is part of the expectations, right? And you want to communicate as accurately as possible, kind of project how long something's going to take. But you know, there's a lot of factors: how busy the publisher is, and how much input and involvement they're giving. The designers, if they're involved, how much input and time they're giving. There's copy editing along the way. Just so much stuff, and I think kind of the general rule for freelancers in general that I've heard before is kind of make an estimate and then double it, and that's usually what's going to be accurate. And that can be, I mean, as you become more experienced, you get a better bead for what a project is going to take, but there can always be surprises along the way. And as far as myself and maybe other freelancers in the industry, I just try not to take on too much work. It's hard to say no, but if jobs go over and then you're starting new ones and you have too much overlap, and it can be really tricky to balance all that. But it's just a learning process.
Josh, did you want to jump in there? I saw physical reaction.
Yeah, I knew this was coming to me. That's the thing that I'm the most terrible at. I'm a horrible time manager, and I always fail when I'm judging the number of hours that's going to take me to do something. And also, like you said, you don't want to ever say no to a job, right?
It's hard.
In a freelancing business, you're not positive that there's going to be work coming down the pipe, so you're not sure if, like, you don't want to turn down a job because maybe there's not going to be one next month. So I find sometimes I'm taking on more jobs at once than is really recommendable, and then I end up delivering only a tiny little bit to everybody, and everybody's unhappy, instead of being able to deliver big chunks of work to publish at a time. So for me, time management is the biggest problem, and that's something that I need to work on. So I don't have any tips for anybody. I need tips for
people. We wanted to see if Tiffany could have audios, but unfortunately she still hasn't got that. But I'm going to ask her a question for her. I'm not going to attempt doing a Tiffany voice. I'm just going to, she wrote a question. And so I'm going to bounce this question. Google is saying, you can hear me? Well, weird. Okay. Well, Google lies. I'm gonna ask Tiffany's question to Josh, and the question is: how typical is it for a publisher or a designer to have a very specific direction they want you to take? So, do you find
I'm sorry, you broke up on me. I didn't hear the middle of that question.
So, how typical is it for a publisher or a designer to have an art direction, like a very specific direction for the project? What percentage or what's that like?
It's not very typical, I find. I've developed a signature style, so a lot of publishers know kind of what my stuff is going to look like when they bring it to me. I have two main styles. There's sort of my heavy outline, cartoonish sort of style, and then I have like maps on a table kind of style, which is those are the two directions that a publisher might expect me to go in when they hire me.
Right.
Oftentimes they don't have a particular look in mind. Some publishers will deliver a style package, which is nice, where they'll show box covers that they like, or just images that they've taken that they say, hey, how about this sort of look? How about that sort of look? Or they'll point me in the direction of games that they think are the right kind. And I appreciate that. I love it. More information is better, instead of always starting with a blank slate. But at the same time, sometimes a blank slate is good, because then you're not being overly influenced by an outside opinion. You sort of come up with a look of something yourself based on what the game is kind of demanding from its mechanisms. Different designers and different publishers have different a different level of completeness for their prototypes, and a lot of the time, the prototype that I receive is going to shape how I think about approaching the game, just based on how it looks. You can't get away from that. You see the graphic design that they've used to create their prototype, and from there, that's going to kind of shape. That has to shape how I see the game going forward. So Like I said before, gameplay is one of the first things I look at, the first thing I look at, and I try to get as complete a prototype and rule set from them as possible. I construct a physical prototype and I solo through the game a few times, get a feel for what it needs, and then that determines what the look of the game is going to be. So a lot of the time, what that initial prototype looks like, designed by the designer or the publisher, whoever put it together, that the publisher communicates their intention for the look of the game, rather than actually having a discussion about it.
Interesting. We're gonna try one more time. Tiffany?
Hear me now.
Hey!
Yay! I just had to like leave and come back in. Apparently. Okay. Sorry about that.
Do you want
Anyway,
to ask Jason Beth Sobel's question?
Yeah, Beth had a great question. So and then I completely lost it because there's just a slew of questions now. So Jason, Beth wants to know, and I think this is a great one to both of you, honestly.
Yeah.
But starting with Jason, what is the project you are most proud of?
Most proud of?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. I don't know if I can just pick one. I think
Pick your favorite child. Come on.
Let's see. I guess I'll go with maybe a pivotal one. I think working on Dead Men Tell No Tales with Minion Games was a super great opportunity. I got to work with Ken Klenko on that, and he's a great designer. And he actually helped art direct that one, and has moved into art direction for, I think, Renegade Games, doing stuff like Lotus and stuff. So he just has a great vision for stuff, and getting to work on that was a really big push for me to move into more games after that. I hand lettered the logo for that box cover. The art was done by Krzysztof. I can't pronounce his last name because it's Polish, but it's amazing. And so the cover was just really beautiful, and the artwork was really evocative, and it was like a pretty complicated punch board, and there was just a lot of learning curve on that one, and a lot of time and energy, and it just really came out really nice. I didn't work on the rulebook on that one, but I did touch everything else. So that was just a big, good learning experience, I guess. And I guess I would also say I'm super proud of the World's Fair 1893 rulebook. Adam McIver did a lot of the rest of the graphic design on that, but one of the things that we did on that one that was really special to me was Randy had me create a map of the Chicago World's Fair to put on the back of the rulebook. I wish I had it next to me so I could show you, but it was like totally extra. You know, it doesn't add anything to the rules, but it just helped give me personally like a scope of what the fair actually looked like. And Beth Sobel's artwork is just like awesome, and the game just drips theme, and just those extra touches on games with publishers who really care about the final product, that was really special as well.
That's super. Yeah, World's Fair is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It drips theme. You're absolutely correct. Josh, same question.
Yeah.
What is the most? Or you already knew it, so go ahead.
Right. I have 2 or 3 answers for that. The game where I'm most proud of the illustration, I've said it in a dozen interviews, is Pirates vs. Dinosaurs. This is a game that didn't do so great, so not a lot of people have actually seen it or played it. But I got to do.
I'm looking it up right now.
Oh yeah, I got to do 120 different pieces of illustration for it. It's probably my best illustration overall in board games. It was a ton of fun. The theme is ridiculous.
The cover's awesome.
The cover is awesome. I proposed a cover that didn't have a title on it. It's just a picture of a pirate and a versus symbol and a dinosaur on the other side. And I was really thrilled when the publisher said, "Sure, let's do that." So it was a titleless cover, and it was pretty pretty strong. And there's lots of great illustration on the cards and on the board and everything in the game. And I just love it. I had so much fun with it, and I'm very proud of it. And I wish that that it had seen more success, but it hadn't. Another game that I'm very, very proud of is Belfort. It's a game for Sen Foong Lim and Jay Cormier. And we did that for Tasty Minstrel Games. I love playing that game, and I'm really, really happy with how all the elements of it turned out. It has a very strong rule book. We get very few questions on it, even though it's like 16 pages or something. And also the game board. This is a game where I really went overboard in hiding tons of little details and Easter eggs in the artwork. It was a really crazy illustration challenge trying to figure out how to draw, I think it's like 12 different structures rotated at 72-degree angles because you see the same building in all 5 segments of the board. And that was kind of fun. And it was just all sorts of little details and stuff for Easter eggs for people to find hidden in that tiny, tiny little citizens of the town of Belfort. So that was a huge amount of fun, and it took me way too long. And one of my earliest indications that I'm a horrible, horrible scumbag at trying to figure out how to spend my time when I'm playing a game.
Love it.
It went very, very over scheduled, but it was worth it.
Absolutely. Again,
yeah.
Oh, you got more. Go for it.
I was going to say, rulebook-wise, there was a game called 1960, The Making of the President, that I did for Z-Man ages ago. It was a 24-page rulebook, very detailed, very heavy game, and I think it's probably the best rulebook I've ever put together. We had maybe in its history 3 or 4 rules questions.
Yeah, and it's a heavy game.
Complex game.
Yeah, it's a heavy 2-player game, so that's impressive.
It's a heavy game, and I don't know, it was really well put together, and I've heard of people using it as like examples on how to put together a good rule book. So that's one I'm really proud of.
Yeah, it's a great game. So people, you should look it up. 1960, Making of a President. I
break that out.
Yeah, it's a goodie. I really enjoy that one. So and the others that you mentioned. Personally, Endeavor. You didn't give a shout out for Endeavor. I love that map.
Endeavor, so. Endeavor is like an evergreen game for my game group. It stays on the table. It comes out constantly. We love it. I know that it's the game that got Tiffany into gaming, and it's all because of my graphic design, so I'm very proud of that. Somebody else actually brought it up last night. My wife Helena was doing an interview for CBC about games, and this guy brought up Endeavor as one of the games that his group plays a lot, and he didn't know that I had done the art for it, so it was fun.
That's awesome. Did it.
Yeah.
Check.
Endeavor's really great, but there was one guy on BGG who complained once about how, like, there was a thread that was started about how the graphic designer for Endeavor should be fired. And blew me away. I couldn't believe it. So I wrote a whole thing explaining to him why I shouldn't be fired. and how I needed his boss's phone number so I could write to his boss and ask for him to be fired in public, which I thought really call somebody out on a public forum, fire this guy for doing a terrible, terrible job.
Right.
But I don't know. I think I was able to explain it to him in a way where he realized that I hadn't done such a terrible job like he thought.
Wow.
I think it was a very well.
That's hilarious.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah. Taste. That's a tough one to manage. So I'm gonna actually talking about taste. I'm gonna push this question to Jason. I'm actually reworking a question that is in the chat that was said in a humorous way by Andrew Enriquez, but Ace, also known as of the Nerd Nighters. But I'm not going to ask it exactly how he asked. Instead, you need to go to YouTube and enjoy the conversation going on there if you want to see how he said it. But I'm going to ask it this way. I'm going to say, which publishers would you wish to work with in the future? Are there any publishers that you would love an opportunity to work with? Start with Jason. Any on the wish list?
I think that I've really loved seeing what Z-Man has done. I think they put out great products, and Stronghold, I think, has had super strong showing with their games. I think they're a great publisher. Renegade Games, also big up-and-comer, I think. Great games. Man, there's a huge list. I recently started working with Pandasaurus. I've been talking with IDW. There's just too many that I I don't even have enough time in a year to fit in all the ones that I would want to. But I think it's just there's so many fantastic opportunities when you go to conventions. Get to know people behind these games instead of just a logo, and it's just fantastic. There's so many great people in the industry. It's too many to name.
How about you, Josh? Any on the wish list?
I have publishers that I've always dreamed of working for, just to get my name on their game box. I think in a lot of those cases, it's going to have to be through like the designing a game angle instead of doing the art, because a lot of the bigger ones have in-house graphic design teams and illustrators that they kind of have on tap that they go to.
Sure.
Like I would love to do something for Asmodee or Days of Wonder or Handsome Gluck. Any of the big German ones would be amazing. But they have pretty well established teams over there that are hard to crack into. So I don't know. I'm happy always to receive requests for considering game design from any publisher, really, and just if I can see that they care about the game and they're putting together a good product and that the game is going to be good, then yeah, I'll definitely put a quote together.
Awesome. So we have another question. There's just so many good questions in the chat, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them. But this one's from Mad Bona One. So. Sorry, I just still can't get over her username. So, Josh,
yeah, it's great.
How did you get started in the industry? Did you approach a publisher / designer, or were you approached?
Was that to me? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, to you, Josh. Mm-hmm.
How did I get started in the industry as an artist?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I began deliberately, like I wanted to be a game artist and a game graphic designer for games. And I began by hanging out on a forum online called the Board Game Designers Forum, bgdf.com. It's still up and running, but I haven't been there in a while. On that forum, I just got to know other game designers, and we established conversations and relationships about designing games and helping each other to fix our games and pitch them to publishers. And it was very low level. Not many people on that forum had contacts or relationships with publishers, but what I would do whenever anybody would report to the group that they had made a contact or that a publisher was interested in their game, I would look up the game that they had submitted, learn what it was about, quickly whip up some samples for them, and say, hey, if you want to, send these to the publisher and say maybe you could hire this guy to do the art for the game. So I did that like a dozen times, and then finally Renee Weersma, a Dutch designer, had designed a game named Chaos, and it was signed by Z-Man Games. So I made some samples of tiles for his game. He sent them to Z-Man, and Zev, being Zev, was like, sure, no problem. So he hired me to do Chaos. I did the game, and from there, he hired me again and again and again, and I ended up doing probably a dozen games for Z-Man. And from there, people got to know me, and I was able to establish relationships with other publishers as well. So really, for me, it just took the one foot in the door with an established publisher. I was able to deliver a good product for him where he was going to hire me again. And then jobs kind of approached me from that point. So I don't really petition for jobs anymore. They often come to me from publishers who want to see my art on a game. Which is
awesome. No, it's great that, well, I mean, it's very well deserved that you're at that stage in your career.
Thank you.
Just like looking at the massive shelf behind you of titles you've worked on. So Jason, this is another question from the chat. This is from Not a Computer. What tool or tools are the most valuable to you? Digital and analog, or like, yeah, what do you use?
Okay, yeah, that's an easy one. First, I want to say real quick that the first Meeple Syrup episode that I ever watched had Josh Capel and Steven Sauer on it. And that was back on episode 6. And
whoa, going back in the archives.
Yeah, and that one was really fun. So if you guys are liking the discussion on artwork, you should definitely go back and check that one out because it was really, really good. And I still remember it.
If you want to hear Josh give many of the same answers to some questions, that's your jam right there.
That's it. So tools, yeah, I use a Wacom tablet a lot. I have maybe like a
twins, buddy?
Medium-sized Wacom tablet. I use it for everything. It's getting kind of old. Wacom, hug.
Yeah.
I use that for pretty much everything on the computer. Graphic design and illustration. I got it probably because I was interested in digital painting, but I kind of phased out of that and went more graphic design. I like doing graphic design more for board games and do illustration maybe more for personal projects because it's very taxing for me personally, creatively. So I still use it for everything. I mean, it's wonderful for Photoshop. I typically use the Adobe suite, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, although there are plenty of other options.
You're in InDesign?
I'm sorry?
You're capable in InDesign?
Yes, InDesign. Yeah. I use a lot. I use almost InDesign and Photoshop pretty exclusively these days. A little bit of Illustrator, but ever since Photoshop introduced vector shapes and objects, stuff that wouldn't pixelate, when you resize it, you can do a lot in Photoshop now. And I find myself in Illustrator less. But those are kind of my digital tools. But for game design, I use pencil, crayons, and note cards a lot. I'd like to just be able to tear stuff up and to get things on paper as quickly as possible and to not have a barrier between myself and the computer, because for my day job, I'm on the computer a lot and I can really overextend what the what a prototype really needs. So I try not to mess with the computer as far as prototyping until I absolutely have to. So I kind of try and separate those worlds for myself.
Oh,
sorry.
Wow, mute yourself.
Steve has messages for me apparently.
Wow. I don't want to know about that. All right, so Josh, I have a question. You do freelance. I'm curious. You were talking before about like scooping up the jobs when they come in, and then there's lulls. But can you tell us a little bit why you choose the life of freelance? Because I'm sure you've had offers to do more consistent stuff and all that kind of thing. What are some of the pros and cons?
A couple of offers to do more consistent stuff.
So what's the reason or pros and cons to the freelance lifestyle?
A couple reasons. First of all, I'm a freelancer partly because I want to remain a freelancer. I want to be able to work for a lot of different publishers and a lot of different companies and just be sort of spread out like that instead of focusing on one company. Being a game designer also, I don't want to have any limitations on who I pitch my own designs to. I don't always want to do the art for my own games. I've discovered this recently. I don't always want to do the art for my own games, and I do want to be able to pitch my own designs elsewhere. And a lot of publishers, when they've approached me for having a position with them, have said that they would want me to pitch designs solely to them and not give designs to other companies. So that's something that was a limiter to me. Sometimes publishers who want you on their staff, they want you to move to where they are, and I'm happy in the town where I'm at, and my kids are happy where they are, and my wife is happy where she is, so I wouldn't want to move away. And then thirdly, and probably one of the factors that is the most heavily weighed in that, is that a lot of publishers aren't going to offer the kind of money it's going to take to get me to stop being a freelancer. Being a freelancer isn't making me millions of dollars or anything, but so far I have not had a publisher offer me a salary that would make up for the freelance salary that I earn right now. So those are my three reasons.
Awesome. Actually, and I'm going to kind of echo the question to Jason as well. I mean, you have a day job and you're doing this additionally. You know, why do you choose that? And what are kind of the pros and cons to that choice? Because if it's an overwhelming amount of people demanding your time, is there any chance that you could make the shift to board game art only or something like that?
It's something that I've thought a lot about this last year. I've had a few companies ask me for exclusivity. I've even put in an application a place or two just to see where things go, but a lot of my thoughts kind of echo Josh's. There's a lot of I mean, board games are very relational, and getting to work with a lot of companies and getting to know more people is just a really special part of it. So to go exclusive, to work with one company, to work in-house somewhere, to maybe move my family somewhere, those are big decisions and not maybe something that I would do lightly. I think that I would also be worried about it eating into my family time. Because I work from home, I have a lot of flexibility with when I spend time with my family and what hours I work. But that could be compensated for probably in a full-time position, but also free time to work on game design. Because if I'm doing something 9 to 5, it's a lot harder to maybe convince myself that my time in my evening should go to game design instead of spending time with my family or other things that are important in my life. So there's a lot of factors to consider. I didn't want to be a freelancer when I started, but now I super appreciate the freedom and the flexibility years in, now that I have consistent work.
Okay. So I want to, Jason, you mentioned earlier, really, I think great part about how you like to just do pencil and crayon and stuff for prototyping. So I'm going to kind of spin that to Josh. When you're doing prototyping stuff, do you have any art tips on things that you found work best for you in the prototype when you're prototyping or anything like that?
Yes, don't have any art when you're making a prototype. That's my art tip. When you're making a prototype, there shouldn't be a picture on it until you've stabilized what the components do. Your starting prototypes have got to be paper and cards with words written on them. That's about it for me. Unless the image is critical to the gameplay, skip images at first and just make the game work with words and bits of paper. I don't move to art on a prototype until I'm sure that it's not going to change, because time is valuable and I don't want to spend it doing art for something that's going to have to be changed eventually. I'm positive that a component is not likely to change very much. That's when I start to do pictures, and then even then, my prototypes have pretty rudimentary art on them. I like to make art clear and crisp and blocky and functional for prototypes, even when I'm pitching them to publishers. They don't need to look like something that I would personally make for manufacturing purposes. It just needs to work as best as possible. And so that's what art needs to do in a prototype, in my opinion.
I think a lot of people share that opinion. Also, yeah. Especially when you have to remake a prototype or something like that. Sorry, Xena is crying. Jason, so you've already kind of touched on your prototype stuff, so I'm going to twist it again and ask if you have any tips for new designers and or graphic artists.
Tips for
like somebody starting out, or maybe they're trying to get into the industry or something like that.
On the graphic design side, I would say, if you love board games, you should attend a board game convention. That's really the world that opened up for me. Those relationships, getting to meet people, getting to go to a con, and like I said, see the people behind the logos. If you're interested, just reach out and put your stuff up on Board Game Geek, post on Twitter, whatever. Ask around. There's a lot of work that you can find, and there's always places to start. For game design, I would say, my number one tip again would be relationships. Get to know people. Spend time playing other people's prototypes. It's really easy to think if you play a lot of games that it wouldn't be hard to make a game, but it'd be kind of like me saying, well, I know how to drive my van, so if I took it apart, I'd know how to put it back together, and I'm no mechanic. That would be impossible. My car would be sitting in my driveway dead for the next 10 years. So on that note, I would say make as many games as possible, as quickly as possible. I think one of the things I did early on was focus a lot of time on one game in particular, and I had a lot of ideas for other things, but I think the best way to grow as a designer is to try and bring as many games to completion as quickly as possible, and then to spend time maybe analyzing those and putting them in front of people and getting reactions. And don't put any pressure on yourself to create anything great or spectacular. You just need to kind of feel out. There's so many different types of games and so many different mechanisms, and each one is going to be a completely new learning process. And so to get as many games that you can just play, it doesn't even have to be done, just that you can have a start and you can have a finish and you can have an experience with something. I think that, and getting to know people, playing their stuff, just getting to be a part of things is really important.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Really great advice there. Thank you
It's
both.
so key.
The time flew by. We're already past time, but we started a little late. So thanks everyone for watching and providing great questions. I want to give a special thanks to both Jason and Josh for hanging out with us and chatting with us, sharing some of your life experience and wisdom. You can find them
So
on
wise.
Twitter, and I'm sure they would happily chat with you if you have more questions and want to pick their brain, or
absolutely.
be pointed in direction. They mentioned there's a lot of good publishers out there looking for quality illustrators and artists. So don't be shy about that. We love encouraging others to connect and network. If you're at a show, look these guys up too. And not only their art, but their games, because they're both designers as well. So you can play their games and pick their brain about design as well. We focus this show on the visuals, but they are also both great designers. I want to give a shout out for next week's episode, where Sen will be back and solving all our technical problems, because Sen never makes technical mistakes. And we have on the episode, we have Joey Vigor and we have Adam Wise. So I'm really excited about chatting with them. They're two fantastic designers, and I think we're talking about designing for commerce versus creating for fun, and so that whole divide and that of money making versus the art of design. So if you have questions along that discussion line, that should be a great episode as well. Tiffany and I are going to try to shoot a quick after show. So feel free to tune in there. And if you have a few additional questions that you would like to hear us share our opinions on, that's kind of our idea with the after show, is the hosts share a little bit of what they heard and what they learned and what they think. So tune into that. Until next week, keep making great games, and we look forward to playing your game soon.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you very much.
Imagine there's music right now.
Dun, 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 dun.
At some point, Tiffany's going to hit the